Tuesday morning arrived with a heavy, gray Seattle drizzle that perfectly matched the mood I had been in since Saturday. I was sitting at my kitchen island, nursing my third cup of coffee, when my phone screen lit up with Harrison's name. I answered immediately. I could hear the faint hum of city traffic in the background on his end, but his voice was razor-sharp and entirely focused. He did not bother with pleasantries. He dove straight into the business of dismantling my sister's web of lies. Harrison told me that he had his firm's private investigator do a preliminary background check on Monica's divorce proceedings. Since divorce filings are public record in our state, it did not take long to find the truth. And the truth was absolutely staggering. Monica was not destitute. She was not a victim of a cruel, thieving husband. In fact, Derek had filed all of the paperwork properly and had been overwhelmingly generous in the settlement to ensure he would not have to deal with my mother's wrath. Harrison read the figures to me over the phone. Monica had walked away from the marriage with a cash settlement of exactly $100,000, plus a very comfortable monthly alimony payment and full ownership of her luxury SUV. Furthermore, the investigator had tracked her recent financial footprint. Monica had not spent the last week crying on a friend's couch. She had just returned from a 14-day luxury spiritual healing spa retreat in Sedona, Arizona, where she had spent a massive chunk of her settlement on hot stone massages and aura cleansings. She got back to Seattle exactly 3 days before she showed up on my front porch, demanding I hand over the keys to my house. I sat there, listening to Harrison, feeling a mix of profound disgust and absolute vindication. She had looked me in the eye, used her own children as emotional weapons, and claimed she was homeless, all while sitting on a massive pile of cash. She just didn't want to spend her own money on a house when she thought she could bully her younger sister into giving her one for free. Harrison then explained his strategy. He had drafted a formal demand letter. It was not a polite request, it was a legal warning shot. The letter addressed Brenda, Richard, and Monica by their full legal names. It referenced the coerced attempt to transfer a property deed using a notary, citing the specific state laws they had violated regarding fraud and extortion. It detailed every single loan from my family ledger, complete with dates, amounts, and calculated interest. The final total demanded was $24,850. The letter concluded with a very clear ultimatum. My family had exactly 10 business days to propose a reasonable, legally binding repayment schedule for the outstanding debt. If they failed to respond, or if they attempted to contact me directly instead of going through my legal counsel, Harrison would immediately file a formal lawsuit in civil court. He would also hand over the evidence of the fraudulent quitclaim deed attempt to the local prosecutor's office. I gave him the green light to send it. The war had officially begun. When you want to send a legal document, most people use certified mail. But Harrison was not most people. He wanted to make a point, and he wanted to make sure they could not pretend the letter got lost in the post. So, on Wednesday afternoon, he hired a private process server to hand-deliver the demand letter directly to my parents' house. I was at home, deep into a complex coding project for work, my phone sitting on the desk face down in Do Not Disturb mode. I had configured the settings so that only Harrison and my Aunt Diana could break through the silent barrier. Diana is my mother's younger sister, but unlike Brenda, Diana actually has a moral compass. She had always been the black sheep of her generation because she refused to participate in the family drama. At exactly 3 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Diana. I picked it up, expecting her to ask about our usual weekend coffee plans. Instead, her voice came through hushed, frantic, and entirely conspiratorial. She was calling from inside my parents' house. Diana whispered that I needed to know what was happening. I could hear a door slam in the background on her end, followed by a muffled, high-pitched shriek. Diana told me that a very tall, very serious man in a black suit had just knocked on the front door. When my father answered, the man confirmed his identity, handed him a thick manila envelope, stated he had been legally served, and walked away. My father had opened the envelope in the living room. Diana described the scene vividly. She said my father started reading the first page, and all the color instantly drained from his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He kept muttering about his retirement fund and how they were going to lose everything. Brenda, impatient and annoyed, had snatched the papers out of his hands. When my mother read the letter, she did not react with fear. She reacted with explosive, terrifying rage. Diana told me that Brenda had been pacing the living room for 20 minutes, waving the legal documents around like a weapon. She was screaming that it was extortion, that her own daughter was a greedy monster. In her blind fury, Brenda had actually picked up a heavy, expensive crystal vase, ironically, a vase I had bought her for her birthday 5 years ago, and threw it directly at the living room wall, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. Then, Monica had arrived. When she read the part of the letter demanding the $24,000, Monica had thrown what Diana could only describe as a full-blown toddler tantrum. She threw herself onto the sofa, screaming about how unfair her life was and demanding that her father fix it. But the best part, Diana whispered, was when my father finally spoke up. He looked at Monica and asked her where the $100,000 divorce settlement was. The demand letter had exposed Monica's lie to our parents. Brenda and Richard had no idea she had that money. Monica started screaming that she needed that money for her healing journey and that I was the one who was supposed to provide the house. Diana hung up shortly after, saying they were starting to talk about calling their own lawyers, and she needed to sneak out before they turned their anger on her. I thanked her for the update, set my phone down, and smiled. The illusion of their perfect family was finally tearing itself apart. By Thursday, the initial shock of the demand letter had worn off, and my family transitioned into desperate, chaotic action. They still believed they could bully me into submission if they just pushed hard enough. I found out exactly how far they were willing to go while I was sitting at a local coffee shop, trying to get out of the house for a few hours. I was sipping an iced latte and typing on my laptop when an alert popped up on my screen. It was a notification from my home security system. The camera mounted above my driveway had detected motion. I clicked the notification, bringing up the live video feed on my screen. A large, rented U-Haul moving truck was backing slowly into my driveway, crushing the edges of my freshly planted flower beds. The truck stopped and the driver's door opened. Monica stepped out. She was wearing designer sunglasses and holding a clipboard, looking like she was directing a major construction project. She walked around to the back of the truck and rolled up the heavy metal door, revealing dozens of cardboard boxes and pieces of furniture. Then, she pulled my niece and nephew, Lily and Mason, out of the passenger side and handed each of them a small box to carry. She was actually doing it. She was trying to force her way onto my property, planning to store her belongings in my detached garage to establish residency. It was the most unhinged, entitled move I had ever seen. I didn't panic. I calmly closed my laptop, grabbed my car keys, and dialed 911 as I walked to my car. I explained to the dispatcher that I had an active trespasser on my property, that I was the sole owner of the house, and that the person had previously attempted to coerce a fraudulent property transfer. The drive home took exactly 12 minutes. I pulled onto my street just as a local police cruiser with its lights flashing pulled up behind the U-Haul truck. I parked on the curb and walked up my driveway. Monica was standing in front of my locked garage door, screaming at the police officer. It was Officer Hayes, a veteran cop who looked incredibly tired of dealing with suburban drama. Monica was putting on the performance of a lifetime. She was crying, pointing at her children and telling Officer Hayes that she was just moving into her family home and that I was a deranged, abusive sister trying to make her babies sleep on the street. Several of my neighbors had come out onto their porches, watching the spectacle with wide eyes. I walked up to Officer Hayes, pulled out my driver's license, and handed him a printed copy of my property deed that I had kept in my car just in case. I clearly stated that Monica did not live there, had never lived there, and did not have permission to be on my property. Officer Hayes looked at the documents, then looked at Monica. His tone was firm and completely devoid of sympathy. He told her that this was a civil matter, that she was legally trespassing, and that if she did not pack her boxes back into the truck and leave immediately, he would arrest her for trespassing and call Child Protective Services to pick up her kids. That threat finally landed. The fake tears stopped instantly. Monica's face twisted into an ugly, hateful sneer. She ordered the kids back into the truck, slamming the doors so hard the whole vehicle shook. Officer Hayes wrote out a formal, documented trespassing warning and handed a copy to both of us. As Monica drove the U-Haul away, effectively humiliating herself in front of my entire neighborhood, I realized that Harrison was right. Every stupid thing they did only made my legal case stronger. The weekend brought a new wave of attacks. Having failed at physical intimidation, my family pivoted to the modern coward's weapon of choice, social media manipulation. Monica realized she could not force her way into my house, so she decided to destroy my reputation instead. On Friday evening, while I was eating dinner, Stella sent me a series of screenshots. Monica had posted a heavily filtered, highly edited video on Facebook. In the video, she was sitting in what looked like a dark, cramped hotel room, holding Lily and Mason close to her. Both children looked miserable, likely because they were tired and confused. Monica stared directly into the camera, tears streaming down her face, and delivered a masterful monologue about betrayal. She claimed that her wealthy, tech-millionaire sister had completely turned her back on family. She spun a story about how I was hoarding a massive mansion all to myself while maliciously locking my own niece and nephew out in the cold. She didn't mention the $100,000 settlement. She didn't mention the attempt to steal my deed with a fake notary. She simply painted herself as the ultimate victim of corporate greed and sibling jealousy. But she didn't stop there. Attached to the video was a link to a GoFundMe campaign. The title of the campaign was, "Help Save a Homeless Mother from Family Betrayal." The funding goal was set at a staggering $50,000. She claimed the money was needed for emergency housing and legal fees to fight for her children's rights. Within hours, the post went viral within our extended family network. The comments section was an absolute dumpster fire of outrage. People I hadn't spoken to in over a decade were calling me a monster, a sociopath, and a disgrace to the family name. Then, the flying monkeys descended. In psychology, flying monkeys are the people a toxic person uses to do their dirty work and spread their narrative. My phone, which was still on Do Not Disturb, began filling up with voicemails. Aunt Cassandra called to tell me that my grandmother would be spinning in her grave. Uncle Greg left a message saying he was disgusted to share my bloodline. My mother, Brenda, sent an email that she had blind copied to the entire family directory, writing a tragic essay about how she had failed as a mother because she raised a daughter with ice in her veins. It was emotionally exhausting. Even when you know you are right, having dozens of people actively hate you takes a psychological toll. There were moments that weekend when I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by silence, wondering if I was actually the villain of the story. But every time the guilt started to creep in, I walked into my office, opened the family ledger, and looked at the cold, hard numbers. I looked at the $24,000 I had sacrificed. I looked at the police report from the U-Haul incident. I took a deep breath, took screenshots of the Facebook video, the GoFundMe campaign, and every single abusive text message, and forwarded all of it in a neatly organized zip file to Harrison. I was not going to fight them in the comment section. I was going to fight them in a boardroom. By Monday morning, the social media storm was still raging, but I had learned to ignore it. I was in the middle of a video conference call for work when my personal phone screen lit up with an unsaved number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. I muted my work meeting and picked up the phone. Cassidy? It is Derek. I blinked in surprise. Derek, Monica's ex-husband, had always been a very quiet, background character in our family drama. He was the guy who stood by the grill at barbecues, avoiding eye contact while Brenda and Monica complained about the world. I hadn't spoken to him since the divorce was announced. Derek, I said carefully, this is a surprise. If you are calling to tell me to give Monica my house, you can save your breath. He let out a short, tired laugh. God, no. I am calling to apologize. And to warn you. Monica has been blowing up my phone all weekend, screaming that I need to give her another $50,000 because her evil sister is trying to bankrupt her. She told me about the lawyer letter you sent. I see the family gossip mill is running at full speed, I replied. Listen, Cassidy. Derek's voice turned serious. For 10 years, I watched your mother and your sister treat you like absolute garbage. I watched them take your money, demand your time, and belittle your career. I never said anything because I was too much of a coward to stand up to them. It is the main reason I filed for divorce. I couldn't raise my kids in that toxic environment anymore. I just want to say, I am really proud of you for finally fighting back. Hearing that validation from someone who had seen behind the curtain felt like a massive weight lifting off my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the villain. Thank you, Derek. That actually means a lot right now. But she is telling everyone you left her with nothing. I know, he sighed heavily. She has over $80,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account right now. I have the bank transfer receipts and the signed, court-approved settlement documents to prove it. She is running that GoFundMe scam purely out of spite. Look, Cassidy, I don't want my kids dragged through a messy public lawsuit. If your lawyer needs the official divorce financial disclosures to shut her down, I will send them to you right now. Consider it my way of making up for being silent all those years. Send them, I said without hesitation. Send them directly to my lawyer's email. Harrison will know exactly what to do with them. 10 minutes later, Harrison sent me a brief, one-sentence text message. Documents received. Checkmate. The deadline for my family to respond to Harrison's demand letter was rapidly approaching. On Wednesday afternoon, my parents finally made their countermove. They realized they could not ignore the threat of a lawsuit, so they went out and hired their own legal representation. Because they had wasted their money on boats and cruises, they could not afford a high-end corporate shark like Harrison. Instead, they hired a budget lawyer from a strip mall firm. Let's call him Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins had clearly been practicing law for about 5 minutes and had absolutely no idea what kind of legal buzzsaw he was walking into. Harrison forwarded me the email Mr. Jenkins had sent him. It was one of the most unprofessional, legally laughable documents I had ever read. Mr. Jenkins did not dispute the debts. He didn't even mention the $24,000. Instead, he wrote a rambling, emotional plea about family obligations and moral duties. The email concluded with a truly delusional demand. Mr. Jenkins stated that in exchange for my parents dropping a potential countersuit for severe emotional distress, I was to completely forgive the debt, issue a formal written apology to Brenda, and officially gift my house to Monica to heal the family trauma. I actually laughed out loud in my empty kitchen. They were trying to bluff a man who handled multi-million-dollar corporate litigation for breakfast. Harrison did not find it funny. He found it insulting. He drafted a response to Mr. Jenkins that was a masterclass in legal brutality. Harrison's counter-email was concise. He rejected the ridiculous demand in its entirety. He then informed Mr. Jenkins that we now had concrete, irrefutable proof of Monica's $80,000 bank balance, rendering her GoFundMe campaign a criminal act of wire fraud. He also attached a copy of Officer Hayes' trespassing report from the U-Haul incident. Harrison issued a final, non-negotiable ultimatum. He demanded that Mr. Jenkins, along with Brenda, Richard, and Monica, present themselves at his downtown law office at exactly 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. If they failed to appear, or if they tried to negotiate further, Harrison would immediately file the civil lawsuit, contact the GoFundMe legal department to report the fraud, and forward the entire file to the district attorney. They had 24 hours to decide if they wanted to surrender quietly, or if they wanted their financial crimes dragged into the unforgiving light of a public courtroom. Friday afternoon arrived, clear and unnervingly bright. I wore a tailored, dark navy suit, treating the occasion not as a family meeting, but as a corporate execution. I arrived at Harrison's firm on the 40th floor of a sleek glass skyscraper, taking a seat at the head of a massive, polished oak conference table. Harrison sat to my right, looking utterly relaxed, sipping a sparkling water. At exactly 2 o'clock, the receptionist opened the glass double doors. My family walked in. They looked small, out of place, and deeply uncomfortable. Brenda was clutching a designer handbag like a shield. Richard looked like he hadn't slept in a week, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Monica's eyes were darting around the luxurious room, looking for a way out. Their lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, looked like he was already sweating through his cheap shirt. They sat down on the opposite side of the table. Nobody said a word. Harrison did not offer them water. He pressed a button on a remote control, and a large projector screen descended from the ceiling behind us. The room lights dimmed slightly. "Let's skip the pleasantries," Harrison began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "You're here because you attempted to extort my client, defraud the public, and steal real estate. Mr. Jenkins, I assume you have advised your clients on the severe criminal implications of wire fraud and coerced property transfer." Mr. Jenkins swallowed hard, tugging at his collar. We maintain that this is a family dispute that got out of hand. We want to find a peaceful resolution. The time for peace was before you brought a notary to my client's home," Harrison snapped. He clicked the remote. The screen lit up. It displayed the GoFundMe page side by side with Derek's official divorce settlement documents showing Monica's $80,000 bank balance. Next, the screen flashed to the video footage from my driveway security camera, showing Monica screaming at Officer Hayes. Finally, the screen displayed a massive spreadsheet detailing the $24,850 in unpaid loans, complete with copies of Brenda and Richard's signatures on bounced checks. "This is not a negotiation," Harrison said coldly, sliding a thick stack of legal documents across the oak table toward Mr. Jenkins. "This is a surrender. You have two options today." Harrison tapped the documents. Option 1. You sign this legally binding repayment agreement. You acknowledge the debt in full. The total amount, plus legal fees, will be divided into monthly payments that will be automatically garnished from Richard's pension and Monica's bank account. Furthermore, all three of you will sign this permanent no-contact order. You will never approach my client, her property, or her workplace again. He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the table. Option 2. You walk out that door right now. On Monday morning, I file the lawsuit. These documents become public record. I will ensure every friend, neighbor, and employer you have sees exactly how you operate. And I will let the district attorney decide if Monica looks good in a prison uniform for running a fraudulent charity scam. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Monica burst into tears, real, genuine tears of absolute panic. She looked at our father. "Dad, do something. He can't do this." Richard looked at the documents, his hands trembling. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for the daughter who always fixed things. I stared back at him with a blank, empty expression. I was done fixing things. "We don't have the money," Brenda hissed, her voice trembling with fury. "This will ruin our retirement." "Then you shouldn't have tried to steal my house," I replied quietly. Mr. Jenkins leaned over and whispered frantically to my father. He was terrified of Harrison and knew they had absolutely no defense. Slowly, painfully, Richard reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen, and signed the repayment agreement. Monica, sobbing uncontrollably, signed next. Brenda was the last. She signed the papers so hard the pen tore through the page. She stood up, glaring at me with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "You are no longer my daughter. You are dead to me. I hope you enjoy dying alone in that house." "I will," I said, not breaking eye contact. "Enjoy the drive home." They filed out of the conference room, utterly defeated. The heavy glass doors closed behind them, sealing them out of my life forever. It has been 6 months since that Friday afternoon in the boardroom. The storm passed, and the dust finally settled, leaving behind a reality that still feels a bit like a dream. The legal agreements held up flawlessly. On the first day of every single month, I receive an automatic electronic transfer into my bank account. It is the repayment installment, garnished directly from their funds. Aunt Diana still calls me every few weeks to give me the family updates, though I rarely ask for them. The financial strain of repaying the debt, combined with the absolute humiliation of the truth leaking out to the extended family, broke their toxic dynamic. Richard was forced to take a part-time job working weekends in the plumbing aisle at a local Home Depot to cover the monthly payments. Brenda had to sell off her collection of designer handbags and cancel her beloved country club membership. As for Monica, she was forced to shut down the GoFundMe campaign and return the few $100s she had managed to scam from distant relatives. Because her precious savings account was being drained by legal fees and my repayment plan, she finally had to get a job. She is currently working retail at a mid-tier department store in the local mall, answering to a manager who is 10 years younger than her. Sometimes, people ask me if I feel guilty. They ask if I regret pushing my own family to the brink of financial ruin, forcing my aging father to work retail, and completely isolating myself from my blood relatives. I think about that question often, usually in the evenings. I sit on my back patio, holding a mug of tea, watching the sunset cast a golden glow over my garden. The butterfly bushes I planted last spring are finally in full bloom. The house is incredibly quiet. But it is not the heavy, suffocating quiet of loneliness. It is the light, airy quiet of absolute freedom. There is no drama. There are no sudden demands for money. There are no guilt trips, no gaslighting, and no fake tears. Every single corner of this house is mine. I bought it, I rebuilt it, and when the people who were supposed to love me tried to tear it away, I fought for it and won. I didn't lose my family. I excised a tumor that had been draining my life for 30 years. So Reddit, after a lifetime of playing the supportive ATM, I finally set the ultimate boundary and sent them the bill for their entitlement. My mother told the entire extended family that I destroyed our bloodline, but looking at my peaceful garden, I think I just saved my own life. Still, some relatives think I went too far by forcing my aging father to get a part-time job at Home Depot. Am I wrong for forcing them to pay back every single cent, or was it the karma they deserved? Thank you for watching, family. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share your verdict in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories to life. Until next time, stay strong and protect your peace.